Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We're in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, verses 13 through 21. Now, somebody comes out of the crowd and says, "Hey, Jesus, I want you to be my lawyer. I want you to be my judge and settle a probate matter on my inheritance." Right? It's crazy. And Jesus says, who put me in this position? This is not my job. Instead, he says, watch out, beware, be on your guard against what? Greed. Greed. And he goes on in verse 15 to say that material wealth doesn't make a life. That he who has the most toys when he dies is still dead. And that life is the abundance of God's blessings, God's grace, not stuff. And so he says there's a certain rich man who had an abundant harvest. There's no indication that the rich man was unjust towards others. He had a good year. And where did that good year come from, right? That abundant harvest. It came from God. But there's no mention of that. Instead, he says, "What shall I do with all the stuff I have?" And instead of asking, what would God have me do with the blessings he has given to me? One of the things that we should understand as believers is that all our time, talent, and treasures are from God, and they are to be used for his kingdom to the blessing of others, right? But he asks, what will I do? He goes, I know. I'm going to tear down perfectly good barns, and I'm going to get bigger. I'm going to build bigger barns. And I think that's something to really question, right? Do we need bigger? Do we need more? And what is he going to do with that? It's not going to be like Jacob when he said, build bigger barns so you can store the surplus to feed the poor back in Genesis, right? Instead, he's building more just so he can hoard. And the truth is that if we have too much, what do we really have? Wealth is not the problem. That's not what Jesus is saying. Material wealth can be a blessing from God, and it can be used for great purpose. The problem is greed and gluttony, where we have replaced the worship of God with the idolatry of stuff and human experience. One of the problems in the Western world is that many people have fallen away from faith, not because of some, spiritual crisis, as it were, but rather simply because they're distracted by shiny things in their lives, be that stuff or experiences, right? And that's the thing, when you read this passage, there's no mention of praising God, but instead it's focused on him. And what does he say? I'm going to eat, drink, and be merry. The focus is on himself, not on praising God who gave all the blessings. And so he says, you're a fool. You made the wrong investment. And what's a fool? A fool is someone who has no fear of God. That's what the Old Testament says. And so Jesus says, all your wealth is going to go to somebody else. And so where are you investing? Where in the earth, where moth eats and rust destroys, or are you investing in the eternal future? If you're rich in stuff, Jesus says, you're going to be poor towards God. And Jesus didn't come for us to be poor towards God. He came so that you would have the abundant riches of God's grace. So dwell in that. Thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.